You are Locked On Pistons Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Detroit, on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, the Pistons messed around and found out. Maybe the worst loss of the season. Absolutely brutal. 129-125. The Pistons at home on 3-1-3 day, no less, fall to the worst team in the NBA. Welcome into a live Locked On Pistons postcast. Buckle up because it could get wild tonight, and not for the right reasons. I'm Jake Reitman. I'm your host here on a live Locked On Pistons postcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake_Reitman. This is your post-game destination, all part of Locked On Sports Detroit, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and of course on YouTube as well. Make sure you check out Locked On Pistons with Kuka Heel, and don't forget your favorite podcast now has a newsletter. That's right. Check out the Locked On Pistons daily newsletter. It's free and delivered right to your inbox, lockedondaily.com. Everything you need to know about the Detroit Pistons. Oh my, this is when you write down March 13th, and it'll be easy to remember because it's 3-1-3 day, the day we celebrate and honor our great city of Detroit. And the Pistons go out and lay an egg, losing to the worst team in the National Basketball Association, the Washington Wizards. Jordan Poole is on the Washington Wizards. Chris Middleton. I mean, the collection, Chris Middleton used to be an all-star. I don't mean that disrespectful by any means, but oh my, 4 of the Wizards' 5 starters in double figures, a couple of guys off the bench in double figures, 69 points at halftime for the Washington Wizards. They outscored the Pistons 38-31 in that second quarter. A strong third quarter surge by the Detroit Pistons, but 33-24 in the fourth quarter frame for the Washington Wizards to outlast the Detroit Pistons for just it's almost, and I said this not last night, Tuesday night, when the Pistons and Wizards played, that the Wizards are where the Pistons had been the previous years. Their lackluster doesn't even begin to describe it. They're embarrassing. They are nowhere near even sniffing the win column night in and night out. Other teams in the National Basketball Association don't respect them. And what do the Pistons do? They go out and allow them to hang around, get off to a hot start, and kick it into high gear in the fourth quarter, the Wizards, I mean, en route to the win. And again, I said it in the opening, the Pistons messed around tonight, and they found out. They found out in the National Basketball Association that when you let a team score 69 points in the first half, you let them hang around, you have them believing in themselves, you give a backdoor cut after backdoor cut, easy bucket after easy bucket, that you're not going to win. And you can't just show up and win in the NBA, no matter how bad the opposition is. And I know the Pistons never trailed the first time these two teams played this week, and it was a unique situation with the back-to-back games against the same opponent in the same venue at LCA. And tonight, the Pistons really did just show up and expect to win. Outside of Cade Cunningham, there's not a player on that roster that put forth a C-quality effort. I mean, you look at this box score, 38 for Cade. He did all he could, 20 of 21 from the foul line. I just heard JB Bickerstaff's post-game comments. As you can imagine, he was even more fired up than I am right now. But he was asked, and, you know, they don't show who's asking the question, but I believe it was Omari from the Free Press asking about how many free throws Cade shot tonight, and JB Bickerstaff said, yeah, they just kept following him. But aside from Cade Cunningham, there's just Jalen Duren. Yes, he had some hustle plays and some good effort plays and some putbacks and that sort of thing. 14 rebounds to go wrong with 18 points. That's kind of what you can count on him for. But nobody else stepped up. I mean, Malik Beasley went missing, just 8 points for him. You know, it's just nobody from that starting lineup, aside from Jalen Duren and Cade Cunningham, really looked like they wanted to be there tonight. And Tobias, a rough night all around. I mean, there's a couple of instances, and we'll get more into this when I have my turning point of the game later on in the show, but the Wizards got every 50-50 ball. They've got every hustle ball. And if for this team that pounds their chest, the Pistons I'm talking about, night in and night out, and Isaiah Stewart talks about being the best defensive player in the NBA, and they're so gritty and they're so tough. How do you explain this? How do you explain getting worked on your home floor to the worst team in the NBA? 129 points they gave up tonight. I mean, I'm just not going to sit here and listen to guys proclaim that they've arrived when they in any given night they can lose to the worst team in the NBA. And I might sound like I'm whining, but I had a coach in college who would, and I'll try to somehow make this PG, but you make a good play and you think you're all that, and he'd say you went from sugar to bleep in 2 seconds. And that's what the Pistons did tonight. They went from sugar to what in a matter of 48 hours, and then they got caught reading the press clippings and everything else that provides this false sense of I don't want to say arrogance, but false sense of just showing up and expecting to win like you saw tonight. So just an overall brutal loss. And this is what a reaction show is for. It's the immediate reaction post game. I'm sure I'll get a good night's sleep and the Pistons will come back and, oh, don't worry, they just have to play the Oklahoma City Thunder next, the best team in the NBA. Maybe they'll lose to the worst team in the NBA and beat the best team in the NBA there. How about that for some positive vibes? But just all around tough night, because you could just feel it happening over the course of the entire game. You could just feel this team hanging around, the Wizards, that is, hanging around. And I mean, more a little bit later, but in the fourth quarter, just allow what the Wizards did to secure the victory is just inexcusable. So let's get to your comments. If you've got your comments, let me know. I want to show some love to everybody that's in the chat. We begin with Demetrius McNeil, always first up on a live Locked On Pistons postcast. Said, boy, all of this mess by losing to the Wizards on 3-1-3 day come Saturday night against the Thunder is going to be a tough bounce back. Exactly what I'm saying, brother. Completely agree. Jay Wow said they had more grit than us tonight, referring to the Wizards. Yeah, it's sad. It's sad and exactly the case, because it's a team that just, every night you have to read about how we're disrespected and nobody believes it and everything else. It's just go out there and take care of business and be consummate professionals, night in and night out. Pros. Go up, show up, do the job, and don't look for recognition and approval and validation and everything else that it feels like this young, immature team is always looking for. And again, you can disagree with me. In fact, I would love to have a conversation with anybody. I know whether you're hearing it live or on the audio only version, or maybe on YouTube a little bit later, I've always, if you look at the comments, I always respond. That's what this is all about. It's sports talk. It's fun. Let's argue. Let's have some different opinions. And maybe you think this is just a one-off night and they'll be just fine, and we shouldn't be too hard on them because look how far they've come and how much they've overachieved. But I just think tonight felt like the old Pistons, and what they do from here on moving forward will tell us a lot about the kind of resilience and resolve this Pistons team has. And maybe it'll be a wake-up call. Maybe it will be something they say, they look in the mirror and say, this type of stuff can't happen. We can't show up and just expect to win because on paper we're the better team. But all of that is a possibility. But ultimately, it comes down to the Washington Wizards getting the win and outscoring the Pistons in the fourth quarter, 33-24. That margin in the fourth quarter is what everyone's going to be talking about.
This is what you'll be talking about.
Part of that fourth quarter that is going to drive me insane was the 3 3-pointers and 9 points in that fourth quarter frame from Kaishan George. I mean, he hadn't even made a shot in the point of the fourth quarter up until that point, I should say. And then he goes out and makes 3 threes. The first one, okay. Second one, third one, how about you defend the 3-point line? And Special K talked about it a little bit, but late in the game like that, have some urgency on the defensive end. Don't let your guys score. Have some pride. Everything this team claims that they're built on. I thought Kaishan George's 3 3-pointers in the fourth quarter really were a backbreaker tonight. That being said, plenty more to get to. On the other side, I'll have my turning point in the game. I'll have my player of the game, and we'll tie a bow on it and look forward to the upcoming game against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Don't go anywhere. We are just getting going on a live Locked On Pistons postcast. This episode of the Locked On Pistons postcast is brought to you by Monarch Money. Hey, if you've ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. And my friends, let me tell you, there's something about Monarch Money that is amazing. And I absolutely love how this helps build your wealth. It's an all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan some long-term goals, because it's all about thinking long-term. So take control of your finances today with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. How about that? 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. This episode of the Locked On Pistons postcast is also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And listen up, FanDuel members, new members, this is huge. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. I love using FanDuel because it allows me to stay in on the action. And what better time than March Madness tournament time? You got the warm-up time with the conference tournaments. I love watching those that are going on right now. I was just watching a little ACC tournament today, some Big Ten basketball. My Northwestern Wildcats lost, but you know what? That's all right, because you start to get in on the action and you can bet on conference tournaments. You can bet on March Madness, whatever it is. There's something exciting to bet on. FanDuel app is simple to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on college hoops action all tournament long. Do it now, my friends. New customers get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, trying to power through this brutal loss. The Detroit Pistons lose to the Washington Wizards. Yes, do not reset your YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to this. They did, in fact, lose to the worst team in the NBA. Now, how about some positives? I think Cade Cunningham's his performance tonight, 38 points and 20 foul shots, 20 of 21 from the line. I mean, that is seriously impressive. Struggled from the three-point line, 0 for 7, 9 of 25 overall. But you look at some of the things I jotted down in this game. I mean, just that brutal first half. And with 5 minutes and 12 seconds to go, you got Tobias Harris fouling a three-point shooter. It's a 4-point play for Justin Champagnie. And that, along with several other plays throughout the course of this fourth quarter, just kept putting the Pistons behind the 8 ball. And it's like, come on, what are we doing? What are we doing? And I go back to what I said originally. You could feel it snowballing, and time after time, the Pistons being on the wrong side of it. But with that said, there were a number of very, very impactful plays, but none bigger than our turning point.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
Pistons lost this game in the fourth quarter, and there were several big plays that were turning points in that game. I mentioned the 4-point play by Champagnie, but how about when Cade Cunningham's going to the basket, he gets blocked. The Wizards go with the challenge. It was out of bounds off of Cade, and the Pistons then are behind the 8-ball and have to get a stop. They're unable to do so. Well, I should say they get the stop, but the offensive rebound, I mean, my goodness, the offensive rebound, you got to give a lot of credit to Middleton, who knocked that loose ball out of Cade's hands. And then the Wizards were able to secure it with 13 seconds to go. So a lot of things like that just continue to add up and ultimately led to the Pistons losing this game. So number of turning points, all in all, very, very disappointing, but none bigger than the offensive rebound that Chris Middleton kept alive to help secure that win for the Wizards over the Detroit Pistons. And you could also add to that and I know I mentioned it earlier, but Keyshawn George's 9 fourth quarter points all were just daggers because they're just 3-pointers from a guy that was not impacting the game at all before those 3-pointers in the fourth quarter. So that being said, it's got to be a learning lesson for the Detroit Pistons tonight. They got to use this as fuel and motivation to bounce back against a really, really good Oklahoma City Thunder team. All right, how about our player of the game segment?
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
Indeed, it is, and it's kind of a bummer that our player of the game comes on a loss because he was the best player on the floor, and maybe this is a biased take, but I mean, Cade Cunningham led all scorers far and away with his 38 points. The next closest for the Wizards with 19 points was Alex Sarr, and make no mistake about it, he was good as well. But it was the Cade Cunningham show tonight. I mean, that was the Pistons' source of offense tonight. And even though they came up short without Cade in that lineup, the Wizards run the Pistons off the floor. I mean, it's not even a game, which is just crazy to say. Yeah, all of this is crazy to say out loud. I got to admit. But ultimately, the Wizards get the win, 129-125. Wizards now 14-51, the 14th win of the season against the Pistons. Pistons 37-30. So a disappointing night. We'll be back with you on Saturday against the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Pistons beginning a little, that game's back at home. So that game's at LCA. And then they begin a nice little 3-game road trip that includes a trip to New Orleans to take on the Pelicans on Monday. Pistons Heat from Miami on Wednesday. That game's going to be on ESPN. And then Friday night in the Big D against the Dallas Mavericks. I plan to be at that game. How about that? A little credential action coming your way. So I'll see what kind of footage I can get at that game. So we'll be on a little bit later on that Friday night when they're in Dallas. So that being said, hey, I know I was a little fired up earlier, but I think that this type of poor performance deserves a spicy post game because this was embarrassing, brutal, disgusting. All right, I'll tone it down a little bit. It's the regular season, but you just can't have these. You really can't. And depending on how the final Eastern Conference standings shake out, if the Pistons are in a position where they come up a half game short, you're going to look at this and say, what the heck? And on 3-1-3 day, no less. I know I said that in the open, but I think that is kind of a bummer. I mean, it's the day you're honoring the city of Detroit. It's March 13th, 3-1-3. I think they had the collab going, something or another. I heard Blaha talking about it. The Pistons shouldn't have lost this game. And I don't know how else I can say it, but appreciate everybody tuning in. Thanks for your support of the Locked On Pistons postcast. As I mentioned in the open, you got to check out the daily newsletter, lockedondaily.com. I know Koo puts a lot of effort into that, so make sure you check out Locked On Pistons as well. We're getting closer and closer to Tiger baseball, spring training. Had about a 45-minute conversation with my grandparents who are going to games in Lakeland, giving me all the updates on everything that I'm not seeing, not being at the games, but we'll be all over the Locked On Tigers postcast as well. So thanks so much for your support, and we'll talk to you next time. My name is Jake Riepma. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake_Riepma. And the Pistons lose to the Washington Wizards 129-125. Hoping for a bounce back on Saturday against the Oklahoma City Thunder. See ya then.